with President Trump. We as Muslims stand with President Trump because he promises peace. He promises peace, not war. We are supporting Donald Trump because he promised to end war in the Middle East and Ukraine. The bloodshed has to stop all over the world, and I think this man can make that happen. I personally believe that God saved his life twice for a reason.
This is really astonishing. Muslim community in Dearborn, Michigan has come out for Donald Trump and has come out strongly for Donald Trump. This was the rally that took place in Michigan, where they were basically imams, a Yemeni group. Apparently the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan came out in his support of Trump, a Democrat, no less, came out supporting Trump. All of them on their campaign stage saying, we want Trump. Trump is our guy. This is the guy who we are voting for. I had the luxury of having my producer was Lebanese Syrian in regards to his, Lebanese Palestinian in regards to his heritage. And he was from Michigan. And I remember him telling me early on, they hate the Biden administration. What they are doing is alienating the Muslim vote. And again, if I didn't have the opportunity of working at the radio station and working with him on many of these issues, I would not have known the level of consternation, the level of animus associated with the policy of Joe Biden in supporting the Netanyahu government, murdering and slaughtering civilians en masse, trying to create the greater Israel. And also on top of that, the lying, the contortion of reality in order to back Israel at every point of view along the way. So you would get the Biden administration saying the only thing that's standing in the way of a deal is Hamas. Well, they know that that's not true. Many on the left know that that's not true. So from our point of view, the point of view of the Muslim community, the point of view of people who care about this issue, you are lying in support of a genocide. When you get the State Department coming out saying, yeah, the murder of all of these people is effectively Israeli self-defense, meaning regardless of who Israel kills, who Israel slaughters, Israel has a right to self-defense. Okay, again, that is something that alienates a community who has family members that are getting killed in that process. So it's not shocking that they will come out and support in this particular way. A poll of Arab Americans in Michigan, who are you voting for? Kamala Harris, 43%. Donald Trump, 45%. Jill Stein may even break the 5% barrier in Michigan because of her, again, unanimous support on the Palestinian issue. This is an astonishing poll, though. 45% for Donald Trump. Donald Trump is winning the Muslim vote in Michigan. And whereas in other communities, this may not necessarily be a huge share of that vote, in Michigan, it is a very large share of the vote tally, meaning it's a voting block in Michigan. There's a reason that the Democratic mayor is coming out for Donald Trump. He has to actually cross a hurdle in order to make that pronouncement that he is campaigning for and voting for Donald Trump. That's not good if your name is Kamala Harris. Now, Kamala Harris has been given several chances to distinguish herself on this issue, to change course, to give a different rhetoric on this particular issue. And over again, she's dropped the ball. And Donald Trump has effectively hit her with this. Keep in mind, Kamala Harris has been running around the country with Liz Cheney as if Liz Cheney and Dick Cheney are statesmen. Not only is this demoralizing for the Democratic Party, that she's moving to the right in order to alienate her base. And for that matter, Cheney is with her for two reasons. One, they agree on foreign policy, meaning the same foreign policy that Joe Biden is going with, this kind of muscular foreign policy that has not done well for the United States or, for that matter, our allies in Europe. Kamala Harris will continue that policy. So you have neocons who have latched themselves onto Harris. Two, the Cheneys and many of the other Republicans believe that if they can beat Trump, they can end Trump and they can take back the party. Basically, we can ally with our enemy in order to take down a bigger enemy, in which case we can regain control. We'll see if that happens. Up to this point, it seems that the momentum is on Trump's side. And again, Michigan is a state that Kamala Harris, on some level, needs to win. I mean, I know they say Pennsylvania, but she also needs Michigan, especially considering that the polling in many of the other battleground states are either trending towards Trump or either in a dead heat. Trump could take it all. Harris knows this, which is the reason why her rhetoric has gotten more shrill over the course of the last few weeks, calling Trump a fascist, Hillary Clinton coming out saying Donald Trump is basically Hitler, and people who are going to his rally in New York are effectively Nazis. I mean, this rhetoric is extremely hot. And I guess my point is, the rhetoric has gotten that way because joy, a campaign about joy, wasn't really doing it. Trump leaned into this big time. And he goes after Liz Cheney, pointing out something that is pretty spot on, actually. Even though, keep in mind, just to be very clear here, Donald Trump has been very clear that he would give Netanyahu any and everything that Netanyahu wanted in order to basically create that greater Israel. He is getting $100 million from Miriam Adelson in order to basically liberate those people from their lives, but annex the West Bank for Israel. So let's be very clear where Donald Trump stands here. Nevertheless, it is an astute point that Kamala Harris is running around with Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney's dad. Those two effectively have the same foreign policy. And Dick Cheney was instrumental in getting 1 million Muslims or Arabs killed in Iraq, not to mention the regime change wars and the wars that came after that. Their objective was to go to Iran. I had a conversation with John Kiriakou. John Kiriakou was sitting in the meeting room when they were planning the war in Iraq. And Dick Cheney was in that room. And in that room, Dick Cheney was having this conversation basically about, we are going to go and reshape the Middle East going all the way to Iran. And apparently, the guy who was John's boss at the time muted the mic, turned to John and said, did I hear him right? Did he say Iran? John says, yes. He said Iran, in which case he unmuted the mic and went back into the meeting. That is the person that she is running around the country with, meaning his daughter, who has the same foreign policy chops. And for that matter, Kamala Harris has been saying that Dick Cheney is now a statesman and everything else because Dick Cheney is apparently voting for Kamala Harris. This is Donald Trump leaning into that.
Kamala is campaigning with Muslim-hating warmonger Liz Cheney, who wants to invade practically every Muslim country on the planet. And let me tell you, the Muslims of our country, they see it and they know it. Her father was responsible for invading the Middle East, killing millions of Arabs, millions. And this is the one that Kamala is campaigning with. And I know Cheney very well. She lost by the biggest margin in the history of the United States Congress.
Whatever you want to say about Donald Trump, he has a point. He has a point. There's also something to be said about this notion. I know many people have made this argument that, hey, Trump is going to be worse, so we should vote for Kamala either way. And as I keep pointing out, a party should not get a reward for backing a genocide. Full stop. It shouldn't. There should be standards within the context of a political party, meaning there should be a bar and say, you know what? I can't go below that bar. I can't go there. I can't go further than that. This is a genocide. I can't put my name to that. You're backing in every particular way possible money, weapons, guns, political support, intelligence, even support in the context of the United Nations, or for that matter, even pressuring the International Criminal Court, who is going after Netanyahu, or at the very least trying to. So this notion that I don't have anything to do with this is utter nonsense. You can stop the weapons. You can pass sanctions. We use sanctions for everything else. You can stop the political support that's taking place in the United Nations. Stopping the weapons by itself would do it, since Israel cannot prosecute this slaughter in the way that they've been prosecuting it without the weapons and express support of the United States. We have given them a blank check, and Lord knows they have used it. I don't care about the grumblings taking place behind the scenes. For all I know, Joe Biden is all in on this greater Israel, considering he calls himself a Zionist. There may be, quibbles about the election and the effect that it has on the election, especially since it is hurting Kamala Harris, who has effectively said, I've been in the room with Joe Biden and making the big decisions, and no, I can't really think of anything I would have done differently than Joe Biden. And when asked about this very specific issue, she's been given multiple bites at the apple. This is not bite number one, but it'd be bite number one for my choices, just because I'm starting it here and going forward. Bite number one, Harris, would you do different?
What do you say to voters who are thinking about supporting a third-party candidate or staying on the couch, not voting at all because of this issue?
Listen, I am not going to deny the strong feelings that people have. I don't know that anyone who has seen the images who would not have strong feelings about what has happened, much less those who have relatives who have died and been killed. And I know people and have talked with people. So I appreciate that. But I also do know that for many people who care about this issue, they also care about bringing down the price of groceries. They also care about our democracy and not having a president of the United States who admires dictators and is a fascist. They also care about the fact that we need practical, common sense.
That is not exactly the clip number one that I was looking for, but fair enough. That was Kamala Harris at the CNN debate when asked, what about people who would vote for a third party because they believe this is a genocide and that you are basically backing it? And her only response was basically, well, people have larger concerns. People need abortions. The food price is too high. But see, therein lies the rub. In the polling, when you ask people, who do you believe is going to be better for the economy? It comes back to be Trump. Who do you think would be better on inflation? It comes back to be Trump. And again, the person who says she's a new way forward cannot articulate how that new way is any different than the previous, short of her being a woman and short of her being a person of color. Meaning, she's been given several bites at the apple. Here's another bite at the apple, just so not hiding the ball. Once again, Kamala Harris, what would you do differently?
2 weeks from Election Day as the final battleground.
You can tell a lot about a person by the company they keep.
How risky is it that you could lose?
You can tell a lot about a person.
The question is, as president, what would you do to ensure not another Palestinian dies due to bombs being funded by U.S. tax dollars?
So I will say, and I think this is to your point, far too many innocent Palestinian civilians have been killed. It's unconscionable. And we are now at a place where with Sinwar's death, I do believe we have an opportunity to end this war, bring the hostages home, bring relief to the Palestinian people, and work toward a two-state solution where Israel and the Palestinians in equal measure have security, where the Palestinian people have dignity, self-determination, and the safety that they so rightly deserve.
What do you...
So, once again, we get this milquetoast answer. For one, this idea that Sinwar's death in any way is going to somehow bring this to a close. Again, those people in Dearborn, Michigan, the people who are supporting this issue across the country, know that it is the Netanyahu government that has been adamant of avoiding any kind of deal. And people aren't blind to this, right? Let me see. I was looking if I had the clip up. They know that it's the Netanyahu government that has been avoiding a deal. It is the Netanyahu government that murdered Hanaya in Tehran, which was the lead negotiator between Hamas and between Israel. Now, if you are clear, it is super clear when you murder the lead negotiator that you are not interested in negotiations. It is not, nobody is going to be unclear in that fact if you're going after and murdering the person who's actually sitting across the table from you doing the negotiations with you. It is super clear. It is super clear that Israel is the one that went into Lebanon and murdered Nasrallah. Meaning, and even the reporting had been that Nasrallah was there, or at the very least was seeking a deal, believing that the U.S., France, and some of the other countries were going to come to some kind of agreement and Israel was going to go in with the agreement. The people who are in Dearborn, Michigan know that. Those imams on the stage know that. That Yemen group knows that. The mayor of Dearborn knows that. So it comes across as being A, deceptive, and B, deceptive in pursuit of defending Israel. Kamala Harris was asked, here's another one, another bite at the apple on this. Hey, Kamala, what would you do differently?
How risky is it that you could lose the election?
Well, it is undeniable that it is something that everyone is aware of what is happening there. I speak publicly all the time about the fact that there are so many tragic stories coming from Gaza, and of course, the first in this phase of everything that has happened, the first most tragic story is October 7th. And what happened that day, and then what has happened since. And I think what's critically important as we look at this moment is, one, acknowledging the tragedy of what has happened in Gaza in terms of the extraordinary number of innocent Palestinians who have been killed, and taking that seriously and speaking truth about that. In addition, of course, to what I said about what happened on October 7 in terms of 1,200 innocent Israelis being
So the greatest tragedy is October 7th, despite the fact that between 40 to 100,000 people have been killed, 2/3 of which are women and children. But the greatest tragedy is October 7th. Again, pretending as if all of this started on October 7th and that the theft of land, the imprisonment, the killings, that these things hadn't been going on for the last 70 years. The theft of land, the people being having their land stolen from them. 700,000 Palestinians in the Nakba being evicted from their land. She's pretending as if none of this is true or none of this matters. An apartheid state or an open-air ghetto that Israel is running while simultaneously calling itself a democracy. Again, the people in Michigan whose families are being killed, or relatives or friends being killed and slaughtered abroad, or for that matter, even feeling a certain solidarity, themselves being Muslims or Arabs. They know that, meaning they're not blind to this. And any propaganda that is coming out that is given a pass, that is giving cover, radically unacceptable, as it should be. Again, there should be a red line. A political party should not get a vote for supporting a genocide. And while I understand that many Democrats don't care about this issue, in lieu of trying to get Kamala Harris in and keeping Donald Trump out, and they would point, Donald Trump is worse, Donald Trump is worse. That is a hypothetical. That hypothetical may or may not be right. But the key point is, in order to create a line in the sand, you cannot get elected by supporting a genocide. It behooves the American public to say no. You're not going to get elected doing this. I'm sorry. I don't care who's on the other end You are not going to get elected doing this. You're not going to get my vote, nor do I want it to be known and etched in electoral stone that an individual that is backing a genocide and has backed it all the way through gets a pass. Not just a pass, a reward for doing that. What does it mean? What does it say when you get a pass, when you can get elected backing a genocide? That is a grotesque thought, that a political party can do something like this and then get elected on that ticket after doing something like this. No, I think it's a big deal. Elections are more than just one single individual election. And it should be set in stone that any Democrat that is going to back this particular policy will lose. Full stop. Those Muslims, those Arabs are on that stage for that very specific reason. Many of those people are Democrats. Many of those people would have voted Democrats under normal circumstances. But when your mom, dad, aunt, uncle, friend, cousin, school teacher, dog catcher, doctor, whatever else is getting killed, you must be very clear. All of these human rights groups have come out decrying the killings that have taken place. The political stunt that was pulled when Joe Biden finally said, okay, you have a month to deal with this issue, and we may stop giving you weapons if you don't. Just to be very clear, I want this reporter, who have been great on this issue, listen to what he's saying. Because the reality of it is that was a political ploy. The month was specific to this notion of November. And they were trying to give Kamala Harris some level of political cover, saying, see, we're dealing with this issue. We're dealing with this issue. But it's unbelievable because you've had a year to deal with this issue. And yet you've come to 1 month before the election and then say, we may do something about it. I'll tell you this. Israel doesn't believe that under any circumstances. It floats in the way that it was put out in its conception. Political expedience. We need to get from point A to point B. We want to help Kamala Harris to do that. So we're going to try to get tough on Israel now. Nothing has changed on the ground. Human rights groups have come out in mass saying there's A, nowhere safe in Gaza, and B, everyone in Gaza is subject to starvation. Because again, starvation was the plan. We're going to starve people out, especially in northern Gaza, because we want to be able to take that territory. Now, if you are Joe Biden and you're sitting there allowing that to happen, and you are giving support, money, bullets, rockets, missiles, political cover, then how are you also not culpable? How? This is one of the reporters that's dealing with this issue. He's been in the White House, and he's been doing great work at the White House press corps. Let's listen to him about whether or not anything is fundamentally changed on the ground within this month that Joe Biden gave.
Humanitarian situation in Gaza and to follow international law. The U.S. gave Israel a 30-day deadline and floated implications for U.S. policy, but as we've asked U.S. officials, they've sometimes been evasive as to what exactly it might mean if Israel doesn't comply. I thought it might be helpful to give you guys a quick sense of how things have gone in the 12 days since then. Since the U.S. sent this letter, the Israeli military has targeted a kid and then bombed him and the people who were trying to help him as he pleaded for help in the streets, banned 6 aid organizations from Gaza, repeatedly bombed a refugee camp, attacked and besieged the remaining hospitals in northern Gaza, and detained doctors working in them. And they also bombed an oxygen station at one of these hospitals, killing kids in the ICU, killed 4 engineers fixing water systems, killed 3 journalists in Lebanon, rounded up people, separated them from their families, and tied up and blindfolded them, bombed an UNRWA shelter, killed a 59-year-old woman as she harvested olives on her land in the West Bank, repeatedly attacked United Nations peacekeepers in Lebanon, and all the while, top Israeli ministers spoke at a conference called, quote, Preparing to Settle Gaza, where they talked about controlling Gaza for years. Civil defense and rescue workers, meanwhile, stopped operating in northern.
I want to give a summary. Doctors Without Borders has come out, the United Nations has come out very strongly, pointing out that these people are being starved to death. And yet, Kamala Harris, Israel has a right to defend itself. October 7th is the greatest tragedy. Hence, these Muslims and Arabs on stage.
Life for a reason, which is to save the lives of others. We support Donald J. Trump for his commitment to promoting family values and protecting our children's well-being, especially when it comes to curriculums and schools.
If Harris loses this race, don't blame blacks. Don't say that they were insufficiently loyal. Don't blame Muslims. Don't say it's because you're a woman. Don't say it's because of the Russians or the Iranians or the Chinese or the Cubans. Don't say it's for anything other than the inability to A, distinguish yourself, B, spending the entire campaign talking about Donald Trump as opposed to talking about what you yourself is going to do and what you believe in. You somehow believe that because Donald Trump is somehow worse to Democrats, that he would be worse universally and that everyone would accept that particular point of view, as opposed to articulating what do you want to do? What is your objective? What is the overall theme that you are effectively running with in taking over leadership of the country itself? I agree, Donald Trump has been completely incoherent. He is a wild card. He is a goofball. I would even go so far as to say he's one of the dumbest people alive. A lot of people are going to disagree with me with that, but that's my take on that. The fact that Donald Trump was willing to try to overthrow the government of January 6th, well, it's not January 6th, but he was trying to overthrow the government in and of itself by not accepting the election results and using maneuvers in order to stay in power. Well, that's a red line for me. I've said that many a times. You would never get my support. And just because I don't necessarily think people should vote for Harris, I damn sure don't think people should turn around and just vote for Donald Trump. By the same token, I understand this. It makes sense to me. I agree with it, even. And not just agree with it. I wish African Americans and other groups did the same thing. If there were standards, if there were levels that you were not willing to go in support of a political candidate, then you would get a different Democratic Party. By definition, they would have to be, or they wouldn't get elected. They have been able to use a fear campaign, especially targeted towards African Americans, especially going back to the 60s and everything else that the monsters and the other party. That may or may not be true. I'm just saying that fear campaign is there. And because that fear campaign is there, it has chilled African American support for any other political party for decades. You may see it creaking now under the strain as African Americans come to this assessment that we have been taken advantage of. Muslims are not accepting this. Whatever you want to think, whoever you are, and you could be a Kamala Harris supporter, and you may not understand why other groups care about the issue of genocide taking place in another country, I would say you should care about human beings being slaughtered with your tax dollars, regardless of where they're being slaughtered. And that should be a moral and ethical foundation to not get a reward. Like, share, subscribe. You can support through Patreon, or for that matter, Patreon. And by the way, the show, it goes from 7 to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday. Definitely join me for it. Again, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday. If you are out driving to work, if you are at work, whatever you're doing, definitely stop by. Oh, and we have a super chat. Thank you. Who is this? We have two super chats. First one, Israel got Candace Owens banned from Australia. UK Starmer vows to build Holocaust memorial for Jews after this. Runs deeper than campaigns. 1000% agree with you. It does run deeper than campaigns. You must understand, from the U.S. point of view, Israel is the colony of effectively whites in the Middle East. It is a European state. Now, they are religious extremists, religious maniacs, they're fascists, deeply racist. But from the United States point of view, that is our colony. And as Joe Biden said, if Israel didn't exist, we would have to build it. So we, in our point of view, are going to give all the support in the world to be able to have influence, pieces on the ground in the Middle East and in that community. And it is not entirely clear whether it's the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail. Again, I don't care about complaints behind the scenes. What I care about is what you do and what you use that power for. With great power comes great responsibility, as the word said. We have another one. This one is for Louise Brooks. We met a few weeks ago in my lobby. I was heartbroken to find out that your morning drive, glad you found you. Louise, yes. So I am moving and I was looking for another property. This was before fault lines and everything else. And I was sitting in the lobby and she says, "Are you Jamarl Thomas?" I was like, "Well, yes, I am Jamarl Thomas." She's like, "I listen to your show." I'm always enamored and somewhat shocked when I get recognized somewhere. And every so often it happens. It happens a few times, actually. Louise, thank you. I really appreciate your support. And yeah, it was sad, the fact that all of those people basically lost their positions. So I'm going to end it here. You can catch me in the morning, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., Monday through Friday. I continue with interviews, commentary. I call it the best damn morning show on the radio. I've gotten the sound thing straightened out. Definitely stay tuned. Both of you, thank you for the help in keeping this channel going. Your assistance, whether it's in PayPal, Patreon, whether it's Super Chats, or for that matter, whether it's even just liking or sharing the video, it does wonders for the channel. Thank you for it. You guys have a phenomenal day. Well, it's nighttime, so have a phenomenal night. Signing off.